lightsabers hum, they light up the night. Pete and Nick keep the galaxy bright. From Tatooine sands to indoor trees, they're bringing the news with galactic ease. ATGLive, we're blasting away, talking Star Wars every Thursday. Interviews, opinions, and all the lore. Hop on the Falcon, they're opening the door. From Vader's breath to Grogu's charms, theories and chats, they keep us disarmed. Around the galaxy tonight, Chris and Kelsey keeping it tight. They're breaking news like a Death Star blast, taking your calls and reading your chats. The greatest guests and what you need to know. Pete and Nick lead the Star Wars show. ATGLive, we're blasting away, talking Star Wars every Thursday. Interviews, opinions, and all the lore. Hop on the Falcon, they're opening the door.
This is Ryan McGee from ESPN, and you're checking out Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am one of your hosts, Nick Milkey, and I am joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Pete Fletzer. We bring you conversations with Star Wars actors, creators, authors, other actors, authors, personalities, people who love Star Wars. And we have with us this week, our special guest is Mr. Ryan McGee. Ryan is a senior writer for ESPN.com. He is one of the hosts and personalities on Marty and McGee, which you can find on the ESPN Network, ESPN Radio. He is an author. He has written multiple books, one of which you can see over my shoulder, Welcome to the Circus of Baseball. He covers NASCAR, college football, pretty much sports of all kinds, and he's a Star Wars fan, which is why he is here with us, and we are so excited to have a chance to have this conversation with Ryan McGee. Ryan,
what's up, guys? How we doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Hey, we're talking to Star Wars, just talking Star Wars with Ryan McGee. How bad could it be, Ryan? I mean, really?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Let's get done, and then you can
give it some time.
Evaluation. But no, I'm excited. We've been trying to hook this up for a long time, so I'm glad we finally got together and catching you guys at an exciting time because we got some new stuff coming, some new content, and I blocked up my Revenge of the Sith tickets in the 4DK, which I've never done, like the 40X, whatever it is, where you shake and all that stuff. And my wife won't ever do it. Yeah, I know a guy who has reserved my seat at the theater, so I'll leave it at that.
That's fair.
That's
fair,
right.
fair.
This may or may not be the same guy who pushes death sticks at a bar. So you may have to be careful with these tickets.
Yeah, you're exactly. Yeah, you're exactly. But it's an exciting time, man. It's I laugh at the people that we're all kind of in the same age group. I laugh at the people that are like, sometimes I say there's too much content. I'm like, man, you clearly are not my age because we thought we were done in '83, right? And so I'll take any and everything I can get, as much as I can get.
Well, I think it's interesting too, like the excitement for the prequels, because I don't know, we won't. I'm a reformed prequelist, as so I can't remember his name who says it, but it's it's like when they first came out, I was of that age where I was like, they were okay. I didn't love them. I wanted to love them, but now we're in a point where they've become part of the bigger story, and B, they've become part of our Star Wars heritage. And to hear you start by saying how excited you are to see a prequel film in a couple, which we all are, Nick and I are as well, but that's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's interesting because something I have learned as a son and now a father is, particularly with the films, every trilogy is for a different group of people. Ultimately it's for all of us. I get that. But what I remember distinctly back in the 70s was my dad, who's the coolest guy in the world, C-3PO drove him crazy. Like why is he in the movie? He's annoying. I dressed up like C-3PO for Halloween, right? And so then you get to, the prequel generation, and you hear, particularly the actors who are in the sequel trilogy, they talk about the prequels were their movies. And then there's my daughter, who's 20 years old now, and was, middle school, high school when the sequel trilogy came out. Well, people like to bang on the sequel. Those are my daughter's films. Like she is so excited about what's next for Rey. And so I think we have to remember, and I think it's the beauty. I say this on our podcast with Arda and Clinton all the time. What's beautiful to me right now is there's something for everyone. If you want to go prestige, drama, murder, mystery, there's that. If you just want to stay old school and just keep everything within, the universe of the original trilogy, there's something for that. If you want to watch a cartoon or whether it's anime or whether it's for kids, it's all out there. And so to me, that's what's awesome.
Just in case, in the off chance, and Pete and I, like you, we fit that special cross section of Star Wars fans and nerds who are also sports guys. So this is one of those great chances where we get together and talk about, a bunch of that stuff together. Before we get deeper into Star Wars, give everybody that may or may not know who you are a little bit of background on who Ryan McGee is, and kind of transition from there into, Never Tell Me the Odds and how that came together with you guys.
Yeah, well, I'm an ESPN lifer. I'm originally from the Carolinas. I went to school at the University of Tennessee. I married a girl who, when I met my wife Erica, she was singing at Dollywood. And it was, I'm Southern as it gets. I moved to Connecticut for a couple of years to work on college football. And when I got up there, and this is in the mid 90s, and Jeff Gordon is becoming a really, really big deal. I'm the only guy in the state of Connecticut with a Southern accent. And they were like, well, you know about NASCAR, right? I'm like, yeah. Well, I don't think I knew as much as they thought I did, but I knew more than they did. And that got me moved back to North Carolina for a couple of years. I covered motorsports forever. And I did grow up a NASCAR fan. My dad was on pit crews when I was a kid and all that. I'm from Rockingham originally. But worked at ESPN, started in the producer track, did a lot of features. And then I started writing for ESPN, the magazine, on the side. And eventually that became my full-time job. And I ended up rejoining ESPN full-time after I was gone for a few years ago, work at Fox and NASCAR, and did a lot of motorsports, but really started hitting college football hard. And that's kind of where I've been ever since. So my title is senior writer. What that means is I do a little bit of everything. You were gracious enough to mention Marty McGee. That's probably what I'm best known for these days, is, me and the redheaded guy who doesn't watch any movies, by the way. Like I'm Mr. Movie guy, and he's Mr. Country Music guy. So we kind of balance each other out, right? But Marty Smith and I, he's my brother, my work brother, and we have a great time. And over the years, I'm very obvious about my Star Wars fandom, my Marvel fandom, and I work for the Walt Disney Company, and I can't. I mean, you were very. I appreciate you bringing up the baseball book. Welcome to Circus of Baseball. As you know, there's a few Star Wars references in there. I can't help it, right? Yeah, that's it. And so people started to recognize that, and so I pitched an idea for a podcast a while ago. I mean, years ago, and eventually it started to get traction as we started to get a lot more Star Wars content. Thanks to Disney Plus, and Clinton Yates, who is my other work brother, and Arda Hukal, who's become a dear friend. They made it known that they love Star Wars, and so eventually, with all this new content, I kept pulling my idea out of a drawer. What about the Star Wars podcast? What about the Star Wars podcast? And what we try to do is we talk about our fandom, but then we also find, sports tie-ins. We try to find athletes. We hit Ryan Blaney, NASCAR champion. He is super hardcore, like covered in Darth Vader tattoos, and tried to ask Daisy Ridley out once and was unsuccessful at a Lakers game. But his entire motor coach, like, is decorated in Star Wars. We had Carl Weathers on not long before he passed away, and of course, as a big part of the Mandalorian, he played college football. I mean, he played in the NFL, and so it's been fun, kind of lacing these two worlds together. Because you guys know, when we were growing up, you had the sports nerds, and they're nerds, and then you had like the nerd nerds, and never between the two shall meet, right? And now. It's all interlaced everywhere, and so we try to talk about that on Never Tell Me the Odds. And knock on wood, we're very fortunate that some of the bosses seem to like it, so we're going to keep doing it.
It's interesting because you say that about being a sports nerd and a Star Wars nerd, and they were separate. I feel like the three of us here on the screen, and many people who listen to us and listen to your podcast as well, I think there's a deeper connection there. I also think there's a musician connection as well. Like I think we feel like your nerddom can't cross. But I mean, gosh, I was like an ice hockey expert and a baseball nerd when I was 7 or 8 years old. Yeah. And then I could also tell you about everything Star Wars at the time. But it's funny because you had different groups of friends, right? I had my baseball friends and I had my Star Wars friends, and now we're all the same people, I guess. So
there was a great ESPN promo they ran for years, where with that tagline, it's sports, it's not weird, it's sports. And there was the funniest thing, there were these guys in the cafeteria, and we all in high school, the cafeteria was tiered up into, that system of this people sat at this table, these people sat at that table, and all the football players are sitting around this table and they're doing their fantasy football draft, and they're talking about this and talking about that, and then they cut to all these guys, classic nerds, and they're just laughing. They're going, nerds. And that's how I feel. You'd be just as nerdy about anything. But now, it used to be you had to have two different groups of friends. And now those groups of friends have, kind of meshed together over the years. And that's what you guys hope are listening to this. And certainly what we hope we're listening to our deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did you discover Star Wars? It sounds like your dad was involved. And I always love the fact that most of these, whenever we ask somebody this question, there's a family element of some sort. I'm not forcing you to go there if there isn't one, but it sounds like there probably was.
Yeah. So my dad's the man. My dad is a baby boomer. Dad's still around. I co-wrote a book with Dad a few years ago called Sidelines and Bloodlines that we wrote with my dad and my brother. And my dad was a college administrator. It was his day job, but he was a college football referee. He was an official for years. I mean, worked national championships and Rose Bowls and the whole thing. That's where my love of college football came from. But Dad was a movie guy growing up. But you're talking about, I mean, Dad's in his 80s now. It was all Westerns, right? Flash Gordon was way before him, and Star Wars was way after him, but he loved movies. And so to this day, he'll be the first one to tell you he cannot sit down and have some nuanced conversation about the career or the character arc of Anakin Skywalker. But he loved it because my brother and I loved it. And I'm OG, man. I when the first film came out, I was 7. When Empire came out, I was 10, and when Jedi came out, I was 13. I mean, I am wheelhouse. And so going down to the Cinema 1 and 2 in Shelby, North Carolina, and my dad took us to go see Star Wars. It had been out for a couple of weeks, but it was so overwhelming and I was so anxious that he's like, all right, let's go. And, at the time, there were warnings out there about, is the cantina a little too intense for kids, and poor aunt and uncle are burned up skeletons. There's some, now it's all, there's 50 things worse than that right now, on my daughter's social media feed. Right. But just back in the day, that's what they're nervous about. But I was OG, man. Shelby, North Carolina, Cinema 1 and 2. I saw Star Wars. I know it was the first film I saw 3 times in the theater. First time we went back to, when Empire came out, we were living in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the Cardinal Theater. And I think I saw it 5 times. And then I'm a Return of the Jedi guy, man, because, again, we thought that was the end. Yeah. And I remember like it happened yesterday. My brother, who's 3 years younger than me, my mom taking us to go see a matinee of Return of the Jedi opening weekend on a Saturday afternoon. And I would never cuss, never use cuss words. But as soon as the credits rolled, I looked at my brother and I went, damn. I remember it clear as a bell because it rocked me. And I went back on Sunday to see it again. I went back the next weekend. I remember it was in that theater for months. And when it finally disappeared, we were disappointed because we thought we didn't have a VCR. We're never going to see this thing again. And so, yeah, I'm OG, man. I've got right here on my desk, I've got my original action figures in the original collector case. And Clinton and Arta, who are just a little bit younger than me, they show the stuff they've got. And I'm like, that's really cool, but can I show you my original R2D2 from 77? And they're like, dang.
Yep. I got my Walrus Man right here.
And we can all play this game.
They're buying it at antique shows.
Oh, love that.
And I'm pulling out of my dad's closet. No, it's those guys. I got 3 C-3POs, and they're all in different phases of fading. You got one looks almost
Seems
silver, and one, but I'm OG.
That's
and,
wild.
And I'm proud of that fact too.
I think one of the things I always remember about Jedi, because I'm same exact age, 7, 10, and 13 when I saw them. And the thing that I remember about Jedi was it was the first time I understood the phrase edge of my seat, because I remember waiting for Vader to do the right thing and literally just like on the it just was that movie definitely had a huge impact and did such a great job of closing everything up, which was nice because like you said, we thought that was it. So
we thought we were done. And people make fun of us for watching that holiday special. And for watching Donnie and Marie, it's all we had, y'all. That's all we had, and we never thought we'd have another. And so it was. But I remember as a writer, Return of the Jedi had a tremendous impact on me, and I didn't even know it yet. But we have what we call the rule of threes, and if you read my stuff, everything I write kind of is chunked in the rule. And Return of the Jedi is where I learned that subconsciously, because you've got 3, incredible battles going on at once. And the way that movie was edited and the way that movie, those were interlaced, with The New Hope, you had the one thing, with Empire Strikes Back, you really had the one thing. When you got to Return of the Jedi, it just was so much all at once, but it was perfectly, my opinion, perfectly stacked together. So it had a huge impact on me that I didn't even really realize till I got to college and they started talking about rule of threes. I'm like, well, that's what I've always done anyway.
Yeah, we talked a little bit. You mentioned Never Tell Me the Odds. You said there's some more of that hopefully coming. That's exciting. You've talked to some fun folks. You've talked to Blaney. You've talked to Carl Weathers. Y'all did a great interview with Billy D. Williams. You actually did an interview with us with Paul Sun-Young Lee for Podathon. Yep. And he's a great sports guy too. He's a Toronto guy, baseball, hockey, all that kind of stuff. In fact, I think shade was thrown at me about my Atlanta Braves and the Blue Jays in that particular interview, but I keep trying to let that go.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that.
That's Arda's fault. But as y'all are doing this show, working at ESPN, we know there's a million, athletes and people out there. Who are some of the surprising athletes you've run into or Star Wars fans? Maybe who's on the wish list? I know Joe Burrow's a huge Star Wars fan. There's a bunch of folks out there. Who have you run into besides the ones we've already mentioned that, kind of crop up when y'all talk about Star Wars and sports?
Yeah, I'm wearing Burrow out, man. I cover Burrow so thoroughly at LSU. One of my all-time favorite athletes I've ever covered. And it's just, and we used to have him on Marty McGee a lot. Marty knew him from when he was at Ohio State. And we used to have him on Marty McGee a lot before he unleashed the most ridiculous season that any quarterback's ever had. And I saw Burrow at the College World Series. I go to Omaha every June for the College World Series. You talking about books? I always say I wrote a New York Times bestseller with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and I wrote a New York Times worst seller about the College World Series 15 years ago. But I go to Omaha every June and and I saw Burrow there. When LSU was making a title run 2 years ago, and I yelled at him, "Dude, we're starting a Star Wars podcast. You got to come on." He's like, "Okay." And so we're going to get him on eventually. But Jack Harvey, who is an IndyCar driver and is part of IndyCar's Fox's new IndyCar team. He's a pit reporter. He's British. I want to get Jack on. One of the funniest things I've ever seen at the racetrack, but I also got it, was that Adam Driver was the Grand Marshal at the Indy 500 2 years ago, and that was to promote his Ferrari film. Yep. And without Jack knowing it, and Jack has a helmet, a custom helmet painted every year for the Indy 500 that has to do with one of the films. And Jack and I bonded over the fact that the Obi-Wan Kenobi finale or the Kenobi, that series finale dropped like the night before the Indy 500. And so Jack and I are on the grid crying, talking about it, you know. And but they brought, without Jack knowing it, he's coming in the garage and just going to work, and Adam Driver was waiting on him. And he turns the corner, and Kylo Ren's standing there. And Adam Driver was so cool and so funny about it. They kind of did the same thing to me, but Jack's reaction. But I tell you, surprised us was we had Teddy Bruschi on, and Teddy, of course, Pro Football Hall of Famer with the Patriots and an all-time with Arizona Wildcats back in the day. Has worked for ESPN for years, and we did a creature draft, where we kind of picked our favorite, you know, creatures. And we invited Teddy on because we heard he was a Star Wars fan. And he said, well, I'll come on, but you got to have my son on. And his son was a college football player. I believe he was at Hofstra. And but those guys were hardcore. Like, I'm always blown away, right? Because we get a lot of like movie stars or whatever. Ithaca, he plays football. I'm sorry, we play football in Ithaca. But we get a lot of movie stars and, you know, recording artists, and they'll say, I'm a big sports fan. And then you ask them, well, who's your favorite player? And it's always the same handful of people, whatever. And same with Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And then you realize very quickly they like it, but they don't really know it. The Brewskis blew us all away. Like, they blew us out of the water. They had done so much research. And so that's my favorite part, is when you know they're a fan, but then when you talk to them, you realize, oh, no, they're a fan.
Like, they're really a fan.
All caps. Right.
Yeah. That's wild. I love that. And it's funny too, because you have, and that's one of the great things about the show. One of the things we've done with the show is just we kind of call it like that opportunity when Star Wars fans meet, right? And it's funny, you see a guy wearing a Star Wars shirt at the mall or whatever, and you pick up a conversation because you're waiting in line, and it goes one of two ways. It's either that guy who's like, oh, I hate the sequels, and you're like, okay, this is that guy, or it's the guy who is like, well, my favorite Cantina creature is, and he names him and gives you all the stuff, and you're like, yep, this is one of us. So
my brother's so fun. My brother's the smartest guy, and he always laughs about that with sports. Like, he'll be on the airplane, and he's a big Baltimore Orioles fan, and some guy will have like on an Orioles hat or whatever. He'll, oh, you Orioles fan? Oh yeah, I'm from Maryland. I'm a huge Orioles fan. And then my brother says, and then I embarrass the guy because I spend the next 20 minutes like doing some deep dive on the, you know, some shortstop in Norfolk who's going to, and then you realize, oh, the guy's like, man, I've go to some games. Yeah, what are you talking about? So I respect all levels, but sometimes I will totally run over some poor guy who at the airport will go, man, I love Star Wars, and then I get irritated.
It's true. You do have to. I find
scale it back.
Yeah,
that's why I like talking to you guys. You have to scale it back. You have to scale it back.
No, you don't have to.
When I do a podcast with a group I really like, it's I don't have to scale it back. Normally you
that's
do
right.
a little bit.
Well, we're gonna dig in a little bit on some of that deep sort of nerdiness here. We're gonna throw a couple of a little later. We're gonna have our 10 question segment for you, but before that, we want to throw some sports related Star Wars things and just kind of get your first thoughts and give us a little bit of detail. Like, for example, let me ask you this question: which spaceship from Star Wars do you think is most like a stock car?
Well, one of the greatest episodes of The Mandalorian, which wasn't actually The Mandalorian, was during Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And one day I want to talk to Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni about it, because, what they did was they took what was already one of the most amazing, one of my favorite ships, which is like just a Naboo starfighter, and they dropped a Hemi in it. That's what they did. They dropped a Hemi in it. That thing had like a Holly carburetor in it. And so, so that was they basically took Richard Petty's, Dodge engine from 1967 and dropped it into his Plymouth engine and dropped it into a Naboo starfighter. So that's the answer. Because it just was, I know it doesn't look like a stock car, but you know what? They took a stock ship and they made it not street legal, and they did it by dropping literally a hot rod motor into it. So no, you talk about a nerd when they took one of my favorite ships and then they dropped, basically a NASCAR, Cup Series engine in it. My wife literally went, oh my God, I said, "What?" She's like, "It's like you wrote this." I go, "It is like I wrote it." So yeah,
They just got to throw a couple cases of moonshine in the back, and they'll be ready to go.
Even had like a nitrous bottle in it, right? So
Yes,
when they're our friend, when he gets pulled over, basically,
Paul hits the button.
They look for registration, and he hits that button, and it's basically, it's
game
basically
over.
just hit a nitrous bottle.
And much like NASCAR, they took a vehicle that anybody could go get and then made it nothing like what everybody can go get.
That's
because
it.
it was so much cooler and better and faster.
As far as you know, it's stock, but it is not. Yeah.
Well, the next one is going to hit another one of your sweet spots, not only baseball, but minor league baseball. Minor league baseball is rich with great mascots, funny mascots, Lansing Lugnuts, that was the big one for years. I live in Montgomery, and we have the Montgomery biscuits, which is ridiculous. It's literally a biscuit with a pat of butter for a tongue sticking out of its
great
mouth.
ballpark. That's a great
It's
ballpark.
a fantastic ballpark. We're very lucky to have that here now, 21 years later. Which creature in Star Wars do you think would make the best minor league mascot?
It feels like, and you mentioned the book, in the mid 90s, 94, when I was working for the Asheville Tourist, is when this, and I write a whole chapter about it, is when this mascot madness kind of started. And, Charleston, South Carolina went from being the Charleston Rainbows to the River Dogs, and everybody started, Hickory never had a team, now they're the Crawdads. And even with the Asheville Tourist, we brought in, we created this tourist bear, right? And Ewoks just look like a minor league mascot to me, like an Ewok logo. I can see an Ewok logo on a hat, right? I mean, doing something. And so, Ewoks to me always felt like I always wanted to see an Ewok. Like you had some minor league ballparks, and I know with the Oakland A's for years, they had the dog that would run the balls out to the umpire, right? And seeing Wicket run out, holding like a basket of baseballs and delivering it to the umpire, I always thought would be like the greatest thing ever. So give me an Ewok. I love Ewoks.
Okay.
That's great. And Ewoks that's the thing that for the minor league baseball mascot, it's got to be kid friendly. It's got to be fierce in its own way, right? And in Ewoks, they're murder bears, but kids love them. So
that's right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, forget the fact that they killed thousands. Sure. You're right. Just roll with the fact that they're cute.
Who would Marty Smith be in Star Wars? Would he be an Imperial, a Rebel, or a smuggler? What do you think?
It's funny with Marty. I say this about Marty all the time. Marty saw the original films. I don't think he's seen another one since. But it's not Star Wars. He just doesn't watch movies. Like Marty on our show will quote a movie, and it's like it's always Tombstone. Like he's never seen I don't think he's seen a movie since like 1998. And so it's so funny. But it's a good question. He's with that red hair and those freckles. He's kind of got a Cal Kestis thing going. I've always thought of that, but there's no question in my mind. Like Marty would be like, he'd be a pod racer somewhere. He's got it. Marty's the most competitive person I know that was never paid to be competitive. You know what I mean? Like I work with Tim Tebow and Roman Harper and these guys, but Marty's so competitive. Like I won't even I won't play pickup basketball with him. And so Marty would more than likely he would not be on a cold planet, because if you've seen him, he just did we were at Ohio State for the first round of the college football playoff, and all he did was scream and yell about how cold it was the whole show. And then he just did the Stadium Series hockey game back in Columbus, and just screamed and yelled about how cold he was all during Marty McGee. So he would definitely be on a desert planet and would be a pod racer. And I'm not saying he'd be good at it, but I'm saying that I've seen the truck he drove when he was in high school in Western Virginia. So he would fit right in with those guys, stealing parts and building pod racers.
Building it up. I like that. Well, before we get to the last one in this little section, I'm going to ask kind of a similar follow-up, and this is very self-serving, and you'll know why when I ask it. I'm a huge Tony Kornheiser fan. I have followed Kornheiser for 20 plus years now, and I'm always excited when I hear you on the show. Tony Kornheiser's his own unique brand of grouchy old man. That's part of why I like him so much. So the follow-up question is, who would Tony Kornheiser be in a Star Wars?
He'd be some sort of bartender, like a cantina bartender, right? Yeah. The guy that's back there cleaning glasses, and now I got to go mop blood off the floor. And why are you guys doing this? No droids are allowed. Yeah, no droids are allowed in here, right? No, yeah. No, I think Tony would be perfect. And it's been so much fun, by the way. It's funny because I never knew Tony that well. But then a few years ago, they were looking for someone to talk about, I think, the Daytona 500, the Indy 500, and I'd written a story about it, and they had me on. And I'm really lucky because he's an all-time legend, man. And they call me for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I love when you're on. He just very quickly. They do viewer or listener emails at the end of most of their shows, and it's always that big deal. Like I've sent 1 million emails, and I've gotten 6 or 7 on over the years. Awesome. So every now and then when you get an email on, you're like, holy crap, this is a big deal. And there's people that will write in and they're like, oh, I work for a pest control company, and one of the running jokes is, can I be the official pest control guy of the Tony Kornheiser show? So I wrote one in at some point about being a Star Wars podcaster and so he went on this whole little runner for like a minute. And my biggest point of pride is he's like, Nick, what do you mean you talk about Star Wars? It was just this rant. And like my friends that I've gotten to know over the years that listen, they're like, dude, he like called you out. So this is my rant. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got a legit TK rant about being a podcaster. So I'm probably going to clip this out and send it to him and see if I can get it on.
100%. He's been really good to me, man. And it's he's a legend by any measure. And so it's fun to get to know him a little bit over the last few years.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorites. So the last one in this section, then we're going to get to our 10 questions quiz, which is a little more Star Wars centric and focused. But this one is also very self-serving. Which SEC rivalry is the most like the Rebellion versus the Empire, and why is it Auburn and Alabama?
No, that's the answer. You said it. You said it before I could get to it. It's definitely Auburn and Alabama because,
as an Auburn fan, that was what I was fishing for. So,
and like the Rebellion or the Resistance or whomever, sometimes their own worst enemy are themselves. And correct. Auburn, and meanwhile, we always say the only thing Auburn does better than play football is create their own drama. And so and the Rebels were really good at that. Sometimes you're like, why are y'all doing this? You need to focus, and that's how I feel about the Rebellion, and it's how I feel about Auburn. Yeah, and then obviously, Alabama's Alabama, and but then when you beat them, when you blow up the Death Star, everybody's
we're all dancing and banging on stormtrooper helmets with drumsticks.
Yeah, but then while you're celebrating and you're doing kind of a bad job of running the Republic, they build another one. So to me, it's
coming right behind you.
It's the perfect analogy. So you took there's no other answer than that.
Well, I kind of figured that would be the case, but like I said, it was a very self-serving question to throw out there.
Well, we're going to now hit our 10 question segment. Is what we do with our guests, sort of like inside the actor's studio, but they're all Star Wars related. So let me get to that first question here for you. What is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
I'm a Return of the Jedi guy. Listen, Empire Strikes Back is one of the best films ever made. That's not even a conversation. Like any list you put together, whether you like Star Wars, whether you don't, no matter what age you are, Empire Strikes Back is on the list. But for me personally, Return of the Jedi is the one that it's the one. I'm literally. I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and my mouse pad is, it's Death Star 2, and my this is my, if you can see it, that's that's the Battle of Death Star 2 is my phone case. And so that's the one. I quote that movie on an almost daily basis. One of the most emotional experiences I've had in a long time was I got to see the Charlotte Symphony do the live score. And I think my favorite piece of Star Wars music is the build up to the attack. Right up to It's a Trap. And so, I'm a Jedi guy.
Cool. Perfect. Similar question, but one of the only non-Star Wars questions in this. What is your favorite non-Star Wars movie?
I love The Right Stuff. The Right Stuff. And I think that's somehow has become forgotten. and I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. It kind of fell in that same window of age for me when I was like 13 years old. I wanted to be an astronaut. Speaking of Alabama, I went to space camp when they first started in the 80s. I went to space camp. I was on track, man, and then all of a sudden, the science turned into math. And that's when I realized that I'm going to be a sports writer. Yeah. And in fact, most of my counselors at space camp were Auburn students back in the day. Okay. But it was a great experience. I'm literally on my desk right now. It's the NASA archives. I got that for Christmas. Oh, wow. I still love it. But The Right Stuff is, to me, one of the most underrated films of all time. And I'm very proud of the fact that my daughter's a cinephile. And we had this conversation the other day. And she's 20 years old, and she would rather watch The Godfather than anything that's out right now. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Yeah, and that's a fantastic answer. And it's just another reminder that we're cut from the same cloth, because same thing. Grew up a space nerd. Then when I found out I had to be good at math, I went, turns out not so much. Yeah. Went to space camp in 6th grade. The whole deal.
There you go. We were. I mean, it was one of the great experiences of my life. But it was. And I successfully. I'm going to drop a Star Trek on you, but we successfully got through the Kobayashi Maru, like when we did the thing. I was the mission commander, and I'm very proud of that. So we were at the national championship game in Houston 2 years ago, college football national championship, and the Orion crew was there, like the folks that are going to return to the moon, and they had the director of NASA sitting with them, senator, and I walked up and introduced myself. I said, "Hey, I just want you guys to know that I went to space camp in 1984, and I've successfully, got us through a worst case scenario mission. So if y'all need any pointers or anything, let me know." So but once it turned to math, my astronaut dreams were done.
Yeah. My biggest disappointment was that we didn't end up getting launched into space like the movie Space Camp in the 80s.
Like we got gypped. Yeah.
What a ripoff.
Well, speaking of numbers, I hate to bring this into math, but describe Star Wars in 3 words or less.
I mean, my personal sentence would be altered my life. But my description, if I was in the elevator trying to describe it to someone, would be space family drama.
Cool. I like that.
Completely nails it. We're going to get into a couple of favorites for the next couple. What is your favorite Star Wars sound effect? There's so many good ones.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, that's really, really difficult. I'm an R2D. I love R2D2. Anything that comes out of his mouth, I'm all about. Out of his not mouth, but processor or whatever. At the Droid Depot at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
I've been known to just drive everybody crazy because I'm just hitting every button I can find. Just droid sounds, but and then the best R2 sound is obviously the scream. When things are going wrong. But I mean, when Boba Fett, when he drops the bomb that absolutely sucked all the air out of the theater. And then we get that sonic noise that it's hard to beat that. I tell you what's underrated though, in its sequels, is on the Holdo maneuver which I love Last Jedi. I'll die on that hill. I'm not going to apologize. But that movie was so good, and that scene was so dramatic. And again, like the sonic charge, it was the silence of it. And then that kind of rip and scream and all that to me, that's very underrated. But yeah, you can't go wrong with the sonic charge from Boba Fett.
That's fair. Totally fair. Well, I think you answered the next one, but who's your favorite droid out of all of them? It's got to be R2, I guess, but
well, I mean, R2, the reality is that R2 saved the galaxy more times than we could spend an entire podcast going through all the times he saved, and it kept everyone's secrets, by the way.
Yes, true.
I mean, the most loyal of loyal. But we did a droid draft. Okay. Actually, when we did, we did that on our Never Tell Me the Odds, and we had such a good time doing it. But it's you know, I love pit crew. I love the pit droids because I'm a NASCAR guy. I sometimes get a little tired of the smart alecks. I wasn't as heartbroken. I love Solo also, by the way. I wasn't quite as heartbroken when she died and they plugged her into the system as everyone else was, because I was like, good, can she just navigate now? But it's hard not to go with R2, but I love C-3PO, and that goes back to, like I said, I that's my answer, because I love that Laurel and Hardy idea. I love that, again, C-3PO had that incredibly emotional moment in Rise of Skywalker when he said goodbye to his friends. I think in him, and I love, the fact that he got the first and last line, and really in the first film and in the ninth one. And so, and I love the book, by the way. I love Anthony Daniels' book about being C-3PO. So I'm gonna go with C-3PO.
All right, cool.
You like these long, rambling, non-committal answers?
No, this is. I was going to say the answers are long and interesting, but they don't really commit to anything. But that's okay.
It's just me thinking out loud. But the answer is true.
Yeah, it's a favorite child situation most of the time.
Yeah,
how are we supposed to pick these?
True.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's change it up a little bit. Which Star Wars character would you most like to be, and why?
I mean, you got to go with Han Solo. I mean, he's I'm being frozen for a while is not any fun, but your son giving it to you in the end is not great, but everything else is awesome. He's just, what I love about him, and I'm a Captain America guy, and what I like about you talk about nerding out when I had the chance to talk to Anthony Mackie at the Daytona 500 on SportsCenter, but then he and I talked about it off camera about what I love about Han Solo is what I also love about Sam Wilson as Captain America, which is there's no super serum. He can't fly. He can't shoot lasers out of his fingers. He can't do any of these things. And Han Solo never once came close to even moving a cup across the table, right? There's no force sensitivity whatsoever. And what I love about the character, and again, I love Solo. I love Solo, the film. That's another hill I will die on. And what I love, because it's that reminder of every opportunity in the world to just be a bad guy and just be happy that way. But has a moral compass that he cannot ignore. And to me, that's what I love about Han Solo. And again, thought the Force wasn't even real, but still was compelled to always do the right thing. And plus he's funny as hell. So it's, met lots of ladies and drove the fastest ship in the galaxy. I'm not sure what else you want from somebody. Yeah, right?
Can't beat that. Yeah, wins across the board.
That's
and at this point, honestly, the way the world's going, being frozen for a little while might not be the worst deal.
Yeah. No. I'm kind of doing that right now. As a matter of fact, I'm not reading anything or looking at anything except for Star Wars.
There you go.
Going into that carbon chamber for a while.
Yeah, I'm all about it right now. Yeah.
All right. Well, this one is not an easy question, but it's. I think we all have one. An unpopular opinion about something Star Wars, something that's a little bit perhaps off the beaten track. Doesn't have to be a hot take, but something that you believe in, or that you got a thought on that people may or may not agree with you on.
Okay, I'll give you two, and it always makes people mad. Again, I love Solo. Solo is one that I will just. Like if I got an hour to kill and I'm doing laundry or whatever, I will just throw Solo up on Disney Plus and just have it in the background. Like I think that people, this internet thing that happened where people took a stand on it was such and then they got mad because we didn't get any movies for a while. I'm like, well, it's because you wouldn't. I'll tell you a story. So SEC Media Days, were in I guess it was probably Hoover, when we were still at the Galleria all those years. And we always do radio interviews, Radio Row. Marty and I would go out. We was pick an hour. And I remember I sat down and there was a guy, and he had on a Millennium Falcon sweatshirt. And the movie had just dropped. The movie had dropped like a few weeks earlier. Yep. And I sat down and we come up live, and it's Spanky and the Sports Freaks from, wherever Mississippi. I don't even know where they're from. I can't even tell you who it was. But I said, well, hey, before we even get started, I said, tell me, you got your Millennium Falcon sweatshirt on. Tell me what you thought of Solo. I'm not going to see that. And I proceeded for the next 10 minutes just to be off on this poor guy. And then they get to the end. I go, all right, so you're going to take a stand on something that doesn't even make any sense. And I go, and then you're going to be mad because they're not going to make any movies. They're going to not make movies because y'all decided to try to punish people for something that wasn't even real or whatever. And I went on and on and on and on and on and on. And then we get to the end. I go, all right, well, we'll talk about sports now. And he goes, well, we're out of time. So we didn't even. I love Solo, but the other thing, and this drives Arda Ocal crazy. If you listen to our podcast, you'll hear it. I love Andor. I think Andor is what we call prestige television, right?
Yes.
There are more amazing moments in that first season, but it took me a minute to get there. Like what I kept telling everybody, we're like 2 episodes in, and I kept telling Arda and Clinton, I kept saying, is this show just going to be British people mumbling by a campfire? Because that's kind of what we got right now. But then once the heist happened, and then the prison break, and I mean the funeral, the moments were so amazing, and I cannot wait for season 2. Yeah. But when I go back and watch it now, it wasn't as slow as I remember. I think my brain is still movie brain. Like I'm waiting for it to get there faster. And now you have to understand this is a television series and it's a slow burn. But yeah, that first 2 episodes, I literally was like, is this, we just going to sit around campfires? I can't understand anybody. Like I've got the TV turned up to 90. And, but once it got going, it was great. But yeah, but Arda gets so mad at me when I say that, but it's true.
What do you think of this release schedule that's coming for Andor season 2, the 3 episodes at a time a week?
I mean, and the way that the show is chunked out, those 3 episodes are very significant because, I think we're dealing with a big period of time within those 3, and then the next 3 are going to be another period of time. So, so I'm really, and everyone has been very open about the fact that this is going to walk us literally right up to the opening moment of Rogue One, which is amazing. But I like it. I mean, it's different. We all got a little spoiled at the start of the streaming world, where we would get an entire season, which granted, this entire season is like 9 episodes, but at least you could sit there and binge it.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, when we started getting 1 a week, my daughter was like, what is this? I go, this is how TV used to work.
This is how it used to be.
Yeah. You kids out there, this is how it used to work. But but I like it. I mean, I've always liked the fact that they typically will drop 2 episodes first. Get a little momentum going, and so, but it's going to be really, really interesting. And it's, and you can tell the people who are involved with it are so excited. And even my friends that work in promotions at the Walt Disney Company, we're already starting to talk about what can we do to can I get a guest on Marty McGee? Can we get a guest on Tell Me the Odds? And you can tell with the PR people who work on these things all the time what they're really excited about and what they're having to get excited about, and they are very excited about it. Very excited about it. And so I'm really, really I'm anxious to get it out there.
Cool. That's awesome. Let's see. What if you could own any spaceship or vehicle from the Star Wars universe, what would it be? And I almost feel like I need to take your N1 off the table and make you choose something else. Because normally with fans our age or guests our age, we take the Falcon off the table because that's everybody's answer. So
right. Well, I did myself a favor. So let me show you. This is I just got this new desk lamp.
Yeah, you did.
Desk lamp. Yep. Yeah, I just got that's my new desk lamp I just got. So
outstanding.
All right. So, but if we're taking the Falcon off and we're taking the N1 off,
we're gonna make you work for it for a second.
Yeah. I mean, when my wife is out of town, what do? I have a PS4, and I have Star Wars Squadrons.
That's right.
And Captain Morgan and I go put the VR helmet on, and we fly that X-wing just all night long. And so the answer is yes. Yeah, my truck. I drive a red Dodge Ram, and and it has the Rebel logo, license plate on the front, and then the it has the wrap around the license plate on the back, and it says Rev 5 standing by. I call my truck Red 5. So I believe that's the answer.
We'll take it. That's a good one.
That's great.
I know, and it feels basic, right? I know the hardcores are like, oh, you got to go. No. It is what it is. But it's but I love them all.
That's a legit answer.
But I'm the one that goes like I do a segment on Never Tell Me the Odds, the Galactic Garage, and it's just me nerding out about ships. But my family, we just know when we go to Hollywood Studios or we go to Disneyland, my family knows I'm going to take my time, because even though I've stood there and done this probably 15 times, we're going to go look at the A-wing, and we're going to stand there.
Yep.
And we're going to go look at the next gen X-wing, and we're going to stand there. And I will just go ship to ship to ship and just stare at them. And that's, I just can't believe they're sitting there. Right. I mean, again, that goes back to me as a kid thinking we're done. I just can't believe that they're sitting there full size. I tell you one more story. So when we did a promo shoot for Never Tell Me the Odds a year ago, and it was, I had been at the Daytona 500. And then we were going to Tampa. The Tampa Bay Lightning was doing a Star Wars night, and all his hockey people let us do a bunch of stuff. But in between, we met at Disney World, and we did like a photo shoot and shot some promo stuff at Galaxy's Edge. And guys, they walked us into Galaxy's Edge at 5:30 in the morning when it was still dark, and the park didn't open until 8. And we were in there by ourselves, and it was dark. But what was amazing was the sound effects run all night.
Yep.
So we were standing in the dark, and the lights are on the ship. Like, it's dark, but the lights are blinking on the Falcon, and the ship that's, delivering and cooking the food, that sits up on that's parked all the time. The engine starts firing up, and there's ships flying overhead. And it was the cool, and we were the only people there. And then Chewbacca walked in to do a photo shoot with. It was, but you talking about nerding out. I mean, my wife still has the video of us walking around the corner at Galaxy's Edge for the first time and me seeing the Falcon, and I knew it was coming, and I still cried. It's just, it is what it is.
Yes. Yeah. I was the same way when I saw the Falcon. It blew me away. It was, as a kid who's always dreamed of seeing it, and then to see it at such full size, it's just blows you away. And I think you're right. One of the great things about both Galaxy's Edge in California and Florida, I've had the chance to go to both. The sound effects are amazing, because you find yourself looking up and you expect to see a shuttle flying over or something, and it's just it's really great. It's really a very cool place to go.
When they did the first Galaxy's Edge opening in LA, they had really large X-wing drones.
Oh, really?
But you basically, they were just designing something. The Imagineers basically just designed something where you see a silhouette, and those things were flying overhead. And you can't have that flying around all the time, because now it's air traffic, and these things are big and all that stuff. But one of them is in the Air and Space Museum, the hangar version of the Air and Space Museum by Dulles Airport in Washington. It's amazing to look at. But I wish those things were still. I mean, every now and then they're going to bring them back. But to see those things flying around, I would pass out. I would pass out.
Yeah. I haven't made it to Galaxy's Edge yet, but I know when I get there, I'm going to be just a useless pile of everything, just standing in front of
it all day. But then I'm also still a Star Tours guy. Like, I'll still ride Star Tours 6 times in a row. So it's an amazing experience.
That was the highlight of the first trip that I took with my kids to Disney World years ago. They were small enough where they needed an afternoon to just stay back at the hotel. And my wife was like, I'll stay with the kids. I was like, no problem. And I literally did Star Tours like 7 times.
Are you sure? Yeah. Are you sure? Okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing.
If you insist.
So our second to last question on this list is, what is your favorite Star Wars moment, whether it's in the film or something that's happened for you?
Well, I mean, the moments for me are when films have come out and been able to take my daughter to the theater, and that's why the sequels will always hold a special place in my heart, because taking her to go see the sequels, and she was just gotten old enough to love it, and had seen the originals, and She loved Anakin, from the prequels. But my favorite moment, and I still get emotional when it happens, is when Luke can't take it anymore in Jedi and comes out from under the stairs.
Yep.
And the music, the truck shot, them, him backing Vader down as they come out from underneath the stairs. And it's such a departure score-wise for what John Williams had done at that point. That moment right there, I get chills just now thinking about it. But it's, so when he says sister, and Luke comes out, that's the one. That's to this day. That's I was sitting in a hotel room in Boston 2 nights ago, and it dropped on TNT or whatever, and I sat there and waited on that moment. So that's the one for me.
Very
incredible.
Cool.
Very, very good. All right, our last one. We all have these certainly as Star Wars fans of a certain age, but also as dads. I think these come into play a lot. What is your go-to Star Wars quote? What is that thing that you just say? It can be random. It can be one of the, do or do nots, but we've all got that Star Wars quote that we go to. What's yours?
All right. This is an answer with a prop. I have a book back here called Admiral Akbar's Guide to Everything. and like you can see here on the back, he says, it's a book. And that's the whole book. It's a barn. It's a cow, right? So, no, it's a trap. In fact, and it's a double espresso, And so I and in fact, it's funny. I do for SportsCenter in the fall, and for College Game Day, I get to write these essays, and they kind of let me pick my topic, and we kind of base it on what all is happening in college football. But I did a SportsCenter essay last year because there was a week on the schedule where the games weren't that great, and my whole essay was, it's a trap. And, be careful. It's a trap. And at the very end, they like Photoshop my face on Akbar's body and said, it's a trap. So, it's a trap is the one. But what I love, and you guys know, I love the subtle ones. So when my daughter was visiting colleges, my wife and I both went to the University of Tennessee. This was a couple years ago. And we went back to Knoxville, and we had just done Marty and McGee. And so people kind of had me on my mind because we'd just done the show, and we're walking around. My daughter's getting the campus tour, and people are going, hey, McGee, and go Vols and all that stuff. And I leaned in to my wife and I go, I shouldn't have come. I'm endangering the mission. And so I love the subtle quotes, but it's a trap. I don't go more than and what are those Star Destroyers waiting for? But I don't go more than 10 minutes without. I don't go more than a couple hours a day without saying it's a trap.
Yeah, it works for everything, and you're right. The subtlety, the subtle ones, those are the ones that work. I said, a bunch of times, mine was always like if I was dropping a kid off at daycare and my older kids were in the car, I'm running in the grocery store real quick. It was, I'll be right back, lock the doors, and then after half a second pause, hope they don't have blasters. Every time.
No, that's it.
Like
that's
the point where they'll say it to me now, and they're 17 years old.
But that's a great moment though. Like my daughter, we were in Europe. We took her to Paris. It was her COVID trip that got canceled. We finally got to take her last summer, and we were on an escalator at the Louvre, and there was a guy right behind us, and I have no idea what language he was speaking, because everyone from all over the globe, was there. And my daughter leaned over and she goes, I think Greedo is behind us. And I was like, that dude totally sounds like Greedo. And so I'm very proud of the fact that she will drop a subtle reference as well. And especially when she gets it right.
Yeah.
So
better.
The Greedo thing, I'll throw this out there. It's just so bizarre. So I have a good friend who, he's actually, he'd done a lot of work for Pixar and Disney, and when he found out that I was a Star Wars fan, he was like, "Oh, I know the entire Greedo speech on Solo," and he just went into it, and it was wild. He spoke Patese. It was just so fun, but it was just one of those things. Like, again, it's he's one of us. He'll understand when I go Jabba Waninchi Boot. That's
it. Yeah. Well, my favorite is now, because I will, my Instagram feed probably is like yours. It's just nothing but Star Wars. Right. And the funniest thing is where they take there's that one girl. It's a clip from I don't know, Gilmore Girls or Gossip Girl, one of them, and the actress goes, she used 3 words: I just need you to say the 3 words. And then it cuts and he goes, to Wadawanga. And I'm like, that's it. I will sit there and scroll Star Wars Instagram forever because the creativity.
My favorite was always the change my mind meme. The guy at the table, it says change my mind, and it says Dewanawanga. Change my mind.
That's it. That's the absolute best.
Yep,
that's great. Well, absolute best is the way to describe the time we spent with you, Ryan. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute blast. Tell people where they can follow you and tell us, make sure they know about Never Tell Me the Odds.
Yeah, I'm at ESPN McGee on all the social media platforms. And then my work is you can find it on ESPN.com. Marty McGee is every Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Central on ESPN Radio and SEC Network. And Never Tell Me the Odds is about to be it's about to come out of hibernation. Our producer Kelsey had a great opportunity, and we were looking for a producer. Clinton is a dad now, so he had paternity leave, and now we're about to get it cranked back up just in time for Andor. So wherever, just like you guys, wherever you subscribe, it was the like, subscribe, download, all that stuff.
All that stuff.
Yep. Never Tell Me the Odds.
Conditioned to say.
Yeah, me, Clinton Yates, and Ardo Cal, and we love y'all's show, and it's been so much fun getting to know you guys. And we had such a great time with the other project that we did together, and we hope to participate in that again this year. So give us a call.
Absolutely,
we definitely will.
Thank you so much,
We
Ryan.
appreciate you.
We'll see you again.